Tim Burton is a director quite like no other. To say that he has no influence on the business is a completely mindless statement. He's been around since 1971 and he's made a lot of short and feature-length films, each one holding somewhat of his unique personality and pushing forward his gothic themes. From his first short film Prehistoric Caveman in 1971 to his first feature in 1985, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, to even nowadays with his newest release Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. It's no doubt that he's in a special league of filmmakers, much like M. Night Shyamalan or any of the Coppolas, where they can just about make anything because their name will bring in audiences. Or at least maybe it used to. Today we're going to sit and rank every single one of his feature-length films, all 19 of them. And I know you might be thinking there's 20, and yeah, I'm not doing Beetlejuice Beetlejuice because that movie came out a week ago. I'm not letting any recency bias apply to it, whether I liked it or hated it. And I haven't even seen it yet. So yeah, I will probably speak about that if it has any large impact on me in the future, but I very much doubt it. So we're going to rank these 19. Let's start at the bottom of the barrel.
Very merry at the day to me. To me. Oh, yeah. I'm very merry at the day to you. Who, me? Yes, you. Oh, me.
Alice in Wonderland, a miserable film that takes Burton's style and visuals to an irritating place. Despite its 100-minute runtime, this film feels like it goes on for years. All the performances are pretty awful. Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter, it's so funny because obviously at the time he was pretty big, and I can't really say that anymore. It just visually looks awful, and he's pushed as the front character. It just is a miserable time, and I would be very surprised to meet someone that actually enjoys this. If you do, then fair enough, but for me, this is by far his weakest and worst piece of work.
Uh-oh. Stinky poop.
I only watched this for the first time recently, and yeah, it's, I mean, what do you expect? There's only so many times I can say these movies are bad. I don't mind the new trilogy, I haven't seen any of the originals, but going into this completely blank, this movie's boring, and very long. Again, another thing you can make with a lot of these Burton films is, despite their long runtime, they feel like they go on for significantly longer. Mark Wahlberg's irritating in this, the designs are weird, I don't know if I like them or hate them, it's just kind of a snooze fest, honestly. If you have any interest in revisiting Planet of the Apes, why would you not just watch the original over this? Oh boy, I completely forgot he did 2 live-action Disney films. And again, this one's not even the worst one. The Lion King still prevails over that. Dumbo just feels incredibly uninspired. It's funny because the original Dumbo is literally like an hour long. I don't understand why this one feels so much longer than it is. I'm gonna keep saying that, I need to stop. It's just not memorable. I feel like a big argument with these live action Disney films is there's no point in watching any of them. Just watch the originals. The originals are significantly better, and Tim Burton's style doesn't make this any better. A lot of it's very ugly. When you think of Dumbo, the first thing you think of is that scene when he gets drunk and there's all the incredible visuals. There's none of that here. This film feels completely stripped of any personality and is generally just a worse version of Dumbo with Tim Burton's fingers all over it. Avoid at all costs. Dark Shadows is a very weird one. I have so many significant memories of seeing this DVD cover when I was younger, walking past the Asda DVD aisle, and you're like, hey, what the hell? And it was also a weird time for me because I thought Johnny Depp was really strange. He looked different and everything. It's not very great. It's actually quite an interesting premise of bringing back a vampire from years and years and years ago, and him trying to readjust to the modern world. But the issue with this is Tim Burton does all of the silly, boring jokes that you'd expect from this. Oh, he stands upside down. He's brushing his teeth and he can't see himself in the mirror. It's like, if I want something like that, I'd watch maybe like the old classic Universal horror films. This one, it's just boring. There's really nothing else to add on to it.
I forgot to watch this one while editing, so I only just watched it like half an hour ago. It's okay, it's definitely not his worst film, but it's nowhere near his best. I don't even really remember what happened. It's mid.
Mars Attacks, the 1996 critical and box office failure, which has quite a ridiculous cast. Jack Nicholson, Glenn Close, Annette Bening, DeVito, Michael J. Fox. It's stacked from the brim. They got Tom Jones to play himself in this. How could it go wrong? It's weird because this film is based on these really old baseball cards from like the 60s or 50s. It's a strange film. A lot of people say this was the turning point for Depp, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with them. I think he's kind of been hit and miss a lot of his career, but for me, this movie just kind of feels directionless. There's some cool stuff in it, yeah, the visuals are alright. Obviously the CGI is a little bit dated now, but I don't think it's downright awful. I just think as far as plot goes, there's too much going on. They introduce a lot of these big actors for little to no reason, and they're just there to sell tickets, and clearly that didn't really work because I think this did pretty awfully for him. It's a fun one to revisit though, I will give it that. If this was on the TV one day and I came down the stairs, I probably would sit and watch it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to re-watch it or see it in the cinema again.
With your big eyes.
Big Eyes is Depp's take on a biopic. He did a biopic years prior to this and it's significantly better. We'll get to that. Big Eyes tells the story of Walter Keane as he basically takes credit for all of his wife Margaret Keane's work. It's strange. It has none of the familiar actors you'd expect in a Tim Burton film, and it doesn't really have any of his signature stylized choices. The only link to him is that some of Margaret Keane's artwork is very familiar to Depp's style. You can see a lot of that in Corpse Bride. But as far as biopics goes, it just is a little bit undercooked. There's no sauce. It's not a bad time. I enjoyed watching it, but I probably will never ever think about this again. And even now, I can barely really remember much about it. It also has some comedy elements in it which just fall flat and feel incredibly awkward in a film that is quite morbid. And you're interested in Margaret Keane, I'd recommend it. But if you don't know anything about her, I would maybe just say give it a miss and read a book about her or something. Frankieweenie is Tim Burton's second animated feature. It's his third if you want to include Nightmare Before Christmas. However, I'm not because he didn't actually direct it. Frankiewenie's okay. It's not awful. It sounds bad. I don't hate this one for the record. I just think in comparison to some of his other work, especially his other animated work, it falls a little flat. It's got some cool ideas. It's based on a short he did a couple of years prior to this. And yeah, if you like animated stop motion stuff, then check this out. But for me, it's just okay.
My God, it's the Headless Horseman, the one I heard tell of in ghastly stories.
The very same!
Sleepy Hollow is very similar to Frankieweenie in the sense that I think they're both kind of just fine. I understand that there's a lot of people that ride or die for this one, so I'll try and be somewhat nice. It's got some cool visuals, some great production design, and the costumes are spectacular. But at the end of the day, I think it kind of falls a little bit flat in that third act. Some characters make some really goofy decisions, and some performances are a little all over the place. But for me, it's just fine. This is one that's going to stir a lot of controversy. Funnily enough, when I was making this list, I actually struggled so much to find a place for this because some people have nostalgia towards it and some people absolutely despise it. And unfortunately, I have a little bit of nostalgia towards it. I think some of the visuals and stuff is great. I think it's a very unique take on the novel. And obviously, it's full of its problems. Johnny Depp's performance is in a mixture of great and comical in the sense that he doesn't really know what he's doing. But at the end of the day, I really think that this is a fun time. Yeah, I understand Roald Dahl books are kind of associated with the bright colours and stuff when you think about them, and especially the illustrations they have on the front of the novels. But for me, I don't mind this. I'm sorry, I think it's fine. I happily rewatch this every Christmas. Now, I have a question for my American viewers. Is Pee Wee Herman like a big thing there? Because it certainly is not in the United Kingdom. I actually only watched this for the first time last year. I was somewhat familiar with him, but I didn't know anything about him. And for me, a lot of this just comes off as very annoying. That being said, as a first feature, it's spectacular. The Danny Elfman score is phenomenal. Danny Elfman is a very frequent collaborator of Burton, and you know what? Their work together really blends perfectly. I think it's brilliant. Would I say this is one of my favourites? Absolutely not. Would I say if I was babysitting kids and I would put this on? I absolutely would. I think kids would get a real kick out of this, and I can understand why a lot of people really enjoy it. But for me personally, it's just not my type of humour.
That right there is a massive fish.
Big Fish is a very strange one when you think about all the other stuff that Burton was doing before this. It kind of stands out. It obviously has some of those visuals that you're familiar with, but for me, it very much is a different type of Tim Burton film, and you know what? I like it. I think it does go on a little too much, and some of the story presentation is a little bit all over the place, but it is actually a very fun time. Again, children would get a kick out of this, I think. It's very spectacular in its themes, it feels very theatrical, and it has great performances all around, so can't really go against it, can you?
You caught him up like a DJ, put the blade down.
No, he's actually looking at no,
See, this is why crime doesn't pay.
This was my first ever introduction to Batman, between watching this and the Adam West TV show, and I really like this film. I think it's the first time that people actually took Batman seriously. Michael Keaton is just so perfect in the role. He is my Batman at the end of the day. For some of the stuff that Christian Bale messes up and some of the stuff that Ben Affleck did awfully, Michael Keaton just shows that he is above all the rest. He's just perfect in this role, and I really wish that they were able to continue for like a few more movies, but unfortunately, you know, Burton left third one and so did Keaton.
Seems a downright shame.
Shame.
Seems an awful waste.
Sweeney Todd is honestly the Burton film I kind of thought I'd hate the most. When I first watched this, I wasn't a fan of musicals, I wasn't really a fan of any of his stuff, but Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, is pretty great. It takes his visuals to a new level of gothic stuff, and it's fun. It's really great. The music's fun. I know it's based on a musical and none of it was really created for this. I think the musical came first, at least. I really enjoy Sweeney Todd. I think everyone holds their own, and it's a very fun time for a film that is. It's funny that I'm criticizing his movies for feeling longer than they are. This one feels significantly shorter. Check this one if you haven't. It's very unique in his catalogue of weird stuff. Now we're finally getting on to the stuff that I really love by Burton. Top 5. And starting off, we have Edward Scissorhands. This, I know, is a film of his that people absolutely adore and love. People rave about it all the time. A lot of people say that it's his best movie, and for me, it's not quite that level, but I do really enjoy Edward Scissorhands. Depp's performance, obviously, is really good. Something that I haven't actually mentioned with his movies, the production design in this movie is so great. It feels like a fairy tale. Just the big mountain and all the colourful little houses. It kind of feels like the Grinch to some degree, but it's great. It's very morbid. When you put aside all the little things like how does he use the toilet and all of that, you can have a really good time with this one, I think. Definitely want to check out.
Where's the drugs?
I'm not got any.
You've not got any?
I'm not got any.
Fucking loser, man. Yeah, I'm joking if you fucking name.
Okay, so I said I really liked Batman. However, Batman Returns really takes this to a whole new level. This, to be quite truthful, might be my favourite Batman movie out of any of them. The Dark Knight's obviously up there. I really love the Batman, but I think Batman Returns is absolutely fantastic, start to finish. Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito in the roles of Penguin and Catwoman just add so much more to the Bruce Wayne Batman character. Keaton once again knocks out the park. The production design, fantastic. This is the most comic booky that Batman and Gotham City has looked. It feels like you're reading a comic book, to be completely honest. It feels completely ripped out of those old Batman comics, and you really can't go against that. I think that's where Batman works his best, not making him a boring, depressing guy like Zack Snyder did. I'd say if you've never watched any of these superhero films, you hate them, you should start with the first two Batman films with Keaton, because they are just great. Completely forgot to mention for the first one, Prince did the music. The music is pretty good.
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy. Now, what do you think? You think I'm qualified?
Now this is one I feel people might get angry for. My top 3 is not so much controversial, but it is very different. I think these are 3 films that people will agree are very great, but I think people will have them in different orders. And starting at number 3, there is obviously Beetlejuice. I saw this in a re-release about 6 years ago in the cinema, and I thought it was brilliant. I didn't know a single thing about it. I think one thing that people forget about with this is Keaton is barely in it, but he absolutely dominates every single scene he's in. And it's no wonder that there was so much demand to make a sequel, because you could quite literally take everything else out of the film and just watch Keaton and it would still be just as effective. Of course, he isn't the only one that's brilliant in this. I also really enjoy Kathryn O'Hara, Winona Ryder and Gina Davis's performance. I'd definitely say if you haven't watched any Tim Burton films, this is the perfect one to start with, because everything about it is great. Corpse Bride to me is everything that Tim Burton is. The style, the animation, the performances, the visuals. I watched this for the first time years ago. This film is absolutely phenomenal. Hold on, what did this lose? I know it was nominated for the Oscars, but Okay, well, The Incredibles is pretty good, I guess. Motherfucker. No, actually, I prefer Corpse Bride to The Incredibles. This is what I mean by you can see why he did the Margaret Keane film. I think a lot of the characters in this are very much inspired by her art. The eyes, they pop out the sockets. But without further ado, I feel like there's no delaying it, and I feel like most people know what it is now. My favourite Tim Burton film of all time is... Ed Wood is fucking phenomenal. Ed Wood is a fantastic time, front to back. It's funny, it has heart. Johnny Depp maybe gives the best performance of his entire career. For me, when The Disaster Artist was coming out, a lot of people were raving about that, but for me personally, this is what I wanted The Disaster Artist to be. The choice to put it in black and white, one that I imagine was hard to fight for, but dear God, it's so beneficial for the film because it just suits the style and everything. This for me is personally Burton at his peak. I don't think he'll ever reach it again. I think a lot of people probably agree with that. But for me, this is when he reached that pinnacle moment of just being the best that he could be. It also, for me, is very unique in the sense that it speaks on being a filmmaker and wanting to make something good and just having that level of optimism that one day it's going to happen and the next one will be better, the next one will be better, the next one will be better. And sometimes you're just destined to make slop. But on the other level, it speaks on queer cinema a little bit. You know, Ed Wood, he's a different type of guy who enjoyed dressing in women's clothing. This is one that's definitely underlooked within Burton's career, and I think everyone should check it out. So that's my ranking of all of his movies. I don't know where Beetlejuice would appear in this, but I feel like it's probably somewhere in the middle. I think at the end of this, we've kind of established that Tim Burton is a good director. However, I don't think he's the man he once was. And although he can just about get any film made for him, it's very clear that studios are very reluctant to give him that money anymore because his time has kind of come and gone. He has that incredible run from the 80s to the early 2000s. I think nowadays he's just a name that when people bring him up, they remember all the good stuff he did and not the bad stuff that he now currently does. But hey, there's worse things to be. He's very similar to M. Night Shyamalan now that I think about it. They both had incredible runs and now they're kind of just doing passion projects that aren't very good. Or are they even passion projects? He's making a sequel. He's never done that before. But at the end of the day, I think Tim Burton is a director that will be remembered for a very long time. Thanks for watching again. Let me know your favourite Tim Burton film as well, because everyone's got a different one I feel, although I feel a lot of people might say Beetlejuice. Thanks for watching again as always, and yeah, see ya.